Welcome to Homicide Life on the Set, a podcast about the Emmy Award-winning television show Homicide Life on the Street, with myself, Chris Carr, and Susan Ingram. On this episode, we're joined by Tina, Bebe, Fletch, and Amanda from the wardrobe department. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Homicide Life on the Set. Susan, how are you?
Hey, good. Great to be back. We're getting deep into our third season here.
Yep.
And really excited to talk to four of the women from the wardrobe department.
Yeah, so we have Tina, Bebe, Amanda, and Fletch, and they, as you're saying, from the wardrobe department, and it's a really wide-ranging conversation. We've got some great little anecdotes about working with the actors, a little bit about the sort of philosophy behind the costumes, and also just about the sort of reality of working in the wardrobe department, especially in the 90s, prior to Amazon, eBay, or even computers, really, or mobile phones. So it's quite an interesting little adventure. And anybody who obviously has an interest in filmmaking and maybe wants to go into wardrobe, this is definitely one for you, just to give you an idea of what it used to be like. And there's still some elements of it now. But it's a really cool little time capsule.
Yeah, and how different for them working on this show was from any other traditional television or film they did.
Mm.
And like you said, pre-digital, so yeah, how they had to get and round up costumes was really great stories. And also, as usual, I love everybody's origin stories.
Mm.
It can be really heartening for people that might be wanting to get into the film business that, you know, you don't necessarily need a film degree. Working on a set, working on anything you can get your hands on is a great way to get in.
Totally. So anybody who wants to catch up with the show but doesn't want to subscribe to Peacock, there are still a few ways you can watch the show. So in the US, you've got Charge TV, is that right?
Yes, Charge TV, Charge TV, which is at watchcharge.com. And if you happen to miss their special ChargeCon, which was a number of interviews with co-creator Tom Fontana, about his favorite episodes. You can still catch those at watchcharge.com. Go to their schedule and go down to ChargeCon, Charge C-O-N, and you can catch all those favorite episodes of Tom's and the clips where he's talking about the making of those episodes.
And in the UK, it's still available on Now TV and Sky, but unfortunately, there's nowhere free to stream Homicide in UK. However, I did discover that Charge TV, you can stream off that. So if you're in the UK, if you go to Charge TV, you might well be able to watch the show from the UK. So fans of Homicide might be interested in Tom Fontana's more recent show, Monsieur Spade. So in the UK, it is now available for free on a service called You. And that service is owned by a channel called Dave that's very popular for comedy. So You is their kind of offshoot of Dave. So you can watch comedy shows, crime shows. There's a lot of stuff on there. And Monsieur Spade is now available for free to watch on there. So I've been catching up on it. I'm 3 episodes in. It's set in Basels, France, which is where Richard Belzer used to have a house, which apparently was thanks to Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan apparently punched Richard. And Richard sued him.
What? I don't think I know that story.
Yeah, that's the story. Yes, apparently that's the story behind how he got a house in Basels in France.
Wow.
So there we are. And I'm still waiting to see whether or not Richard Belzer will make an appearance in the show in the background, because he was alive when they were filming it, but I can't guarantee he's actually in the show. But I haven't seen him credited or mentioned, so he might not be. But I like to think he was there in spirit, because they were filming just down the road from where he had a house.
And you did mention that one of the Homicide, I think was on more than once, Dean Winter.
Yeah, Dean Winters makes an appearance as a Brooklyn priest. So there are a few familiar faces faces popping up in the show, and Clive Owen plays Sam Spade. So it's all about Sam Spade and his life after leaving San Francisco, and he ends up in post-World War II France, and it's very interesting. So I'm enjoying it, so I hope you all do too. Just a quick note, unfortunately, due to technical issues, we lost Fletch towards the end of this conversation. She very kindly pre-recorded some answers, which I've inserted into the episode. So let's get to it. So this is the wardrobe department, and I hope you enjoy the episode, and we will catch you on the other side.
Hey, everybody. So today we have an awesome group from the wardrobe and costume department, including Tina Nigro, who was the costume designer, Bebe Ferro, who was a lot of you guys had multiple titles. So wardrobe supervisors, costumers, also people that worked on set with the actors. And we also have Catherine Incaprera, whose nickname is Fletch, so we'll probably be calling her Fletch through the interview. And also Amanda Johnson, who worked in the wardrobe department and now works as a fashion designer and has her own fashion studio in Florida. So also want to mention there was like total more than a dozen people over the seven seasons of Homicide that worked in the wardrobe department, including multiple costume designers and all kinds of wardrobe and costume people that worked on and off the set. But we usually try to get on the people that did the most episodes, which is why we have it. This, of course, we also can't have 15 people talking to 15 people at a time. So happy to have everybody with us today. And so I guess we'll just start off with our normal question where we talk to everybody about how they got into the film business and then how they sort of filtered down to deciding they wanted to do wardrobe. So Tina, why don't you start off? Also want to mention everybody has the most amazing resumes, and the stuff that you all have worked on since Homicide is just, it's so much fun for me to look at and see what everybody's been doing for the past 30 years. So Tina, why don't you start off? What's your background, and how did you get into film, and then eventually onto Homicide, and decided to focus on wardrobe?
I was a fashion designer first, and my uncle was Jim Finnerty.
Oh, right. I knew there was a connection. I couldn't remember.
So I had done some pilots for Tom before as a costume designer. In between being a fashion designer. And then they needed somebody to come to Baltimore. And so they asked me to come, and I said, sure, why not? And I did. And then, so that's how I ended up there.
Okay, and you started right off with the first season, correct?
No. I think I tried to figure this out. I think because Van was the costume designer first.
Okay.
And I think I started because I think Homicide started and there was only like 4 episodes, like it was like a short season, like they just did a couple of episodes. And then maybe there's a second season that wasn't a full season. I came on when it came into a full season, I think. So I don't know if that was the second season or the third season. Yeah.
Roland did the second season.
Roland did. Okay. I wondered. Yeah. Because on here, and because, so the first season was 9 episodes and the second was super truncated 4 episodes. And then the third season started with our full 22, 23.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. Cool. So, Beeb.
Yeah.
How about you? How did you get into the business? And
great question.
Beeb's a local Baltimore gal too. So how did you start off and then end up in wardrobe?
Yeah, so I graduated from college and started working full-time at the computer store where I worked as the assistant to the sales manager. And then he and I branched off, opened up our own place. It wasn't making any money, and he had a mortgage and a kid and alimony to pay. And I didn't. So I just went back to my lifeguarding job. I'm going to get there eventually. I was teaching swimming lessons, and I was teaching Deb Dalton's kids how to swim. And she was working in the film business.
Deb was also in wardrobe. Yeah.
She worked in props and costumes back then. And she called me up one day and she said, "Hey, you've been on sets before, and you want to work on a movie tomorrow? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll work on a movie tomorrow. And then that was Major League 2. So that was my first
Oh, okay.
movie. I got into the union my second day of work because the union came in and said this position is a union position. And if you want to join the union, you could stay working here. And so that's how I became a wardrobe person. And I've never done anything else.
Right. And was Homicide the next thing you worked on?
Yeah, probably the next thing I day played for Deb and Mara when they needed somebody additional for heavy background days or if they needed to take a day off.
And that's Mara. Mara. We called her Majarowitz, but it should probably be pronounced Macharovich,
yes.
right? And she was also in the wardrobe department for many seasons on Homicide.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. So Amanda, what was your connection, and how did you get into costume and wardrobe, and what was the Homicide connection?
I grew up, I'm from Baltimore originally, and I grew up with Greer Yaton and Brooke Yaton. Greer was my best girlfriend in preschool, and Greer is actually Pat Moran's daughter. And so from a very early, like preschool, I started really spending all my time with that family and grew up around the film world, even though I had my own sort of sights. I always knew I wanted to be an artist, and I went to school for the arts, and then I went on to college in Boston and studied portrait painting and worked very hard to be, a fine artist. My mother, my actual mother, was a couture seamstress, and my dad is an interior designer. So I kind of grew up in the arts. And when I graduated from college, I tried to stay in Boston as long as I could before I realized I needed to get like a real job. And I moved back to Baltimore, and there was an opening in the wardrobe department. And I interviewed with Tina, and she and I hit it off, and that's all she wrote. I grew up thinking I'm never going to get involved in film because I saw how hard everybody worked, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. And that's not what happened. I ended up coming in the back door and working with Tina, and that was, even though I grew up on the sets, like the first set I had ever seen was Polyester with John Waters, and I used to watch Van do Divine's makeup, and so it was all very much a part of me. I just was so defiant for so long and just thought, I'm not going to do what everybody else does. And here I am.
Wow, what a great, I always love to hear when people started out with John Waters, because John was just such a terrific director for the crew. He knew he knew everyone, he knew all our names. He's just really a terrific director. And I always think about, all the directors I've worked with, and he and Gary Marshall and a couple other people sort of float to the top. But to be able to start out with him, what a great way to start in the business, because you sort of start at the top of that trickle down of having a really nice, compassionate leader that makes you want to be on a crew, right? It makes you want to be on a crew when you have directors like that. So that's a great place to start. So if you could each also go through and sort of explain for the audience the different titles and what your job entailed, because there's so many different parts of wardrobe and costume on a television show, from being, on the truck and from designing the clothes and being on the truck, but then also dealing every day with hands on the actors. And we'll start with Tina. Also, I'd love to hear about in pre-production, how you decide, and obviously a lot of this was decided before you got there, but you could tell me from, your other experiences, how it's decided to show the personality of the characters which I think is really super interesting, through how you're going to dress them and what they're going to wear. Obviously, on Homicide, there was a very iconic, Meldrick Lewis had his hat, and G had the Italian suits. So, Tina, do you want to talk a little bit about that connection of creating characters through the wardrobe, but also just what your job entailed on sort of on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So I usually read the script and have conversations with the writers and producers and where they're thinking the character is. And then I start to do research and make boards and collect images of things. And then I start to, it also helps when you know who the actor is. Sometimes you're making characters and you don't know who the actor is, which is a lot harder for me, because it definitely, who the actor is definitely plays a part in how the person's going to look, except if it's like period, I think is a different thing. But when it's, when it's modern day, so, and then I gather photos and research, and I come up with like concept boards, and then I start to have conversations with the actors.
Explain for the audience what a concept board is, because I think that's really interesting. There's a really good behind-the-scenes documentary about the new Frankenstein film, the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein film, and they did a really nice section with the wardrobe people and showed those concept boards. So could you just talk about what that is for people?
Yeah, I start to gather images. It could be anything from shoes to like a certain aesthetic. For Homicide, after I came on, it was like me creating the younger, like Callie and Reed and those kind of guys. So it was like Reed came from the fire. He had a fire background, and I think he used to wear like a medal that was like his shield thing. So I just start to collect different images of what, and it's not necessarily the specific pair of pants, but it's like the type of look. Is he worn out? Is everything pristine? And I just gather photos and make it into boards, and then present it, and then we in our meetings pick and choose, and this is a great image, and let's go this way or whatever. And that's how, and it's just collecting images, and it could be from everything from old actors and to like stuff I find in catalogs.
Tina, I did have a question, because in interviewing Tony Lewis, the Terry Stivers character, we talked a lot about her wardrobe, and it's really interesting because we go back and we're rewatching a lot of things. She had a real like color theme. She was very much in the autumns and the oranges and browns. And is that something that comes from the top? Is that something that comes from you? I thought that was really interesting for her.
It usually from me. I definitely see people in colors. Like when I do characters, they definitely have a specific color theme to them. And I just feel like with her, she was, an African American young girl that, but it also was, how do I phrase this? It was a show for NBC, so people couldn't be too,
Oh, interesting. Like ethnic? NBC didn't want her to be too ethnic?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I was trying to word it,
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, she talked about how they kept changing her hair because NBC had issues with her hair. And I'm like, what? And it obviously was some vision they had of not too ethnic, apparently. Interesting. Wow.
Yep. Yeah. So, so to me, those kind of colors and that richness was a way for me to portray that without being I guess on the nose and not having the network realize what was happening.
Right. Interesting. But she kept her puka shells for a while, right?
She did.
That was great.
Yeah.
So let's bounce back to Fletch. We went through everybody's background. So what did you start off as? What's your background, and how did you get interested in focusing on wardrobe? And what was your path or connection to get on to Homicide? How'd that happen?
Oof.
All 5 questions at once.
I guess I love to. I know I'm like, oh, I hope I can say all this really quickly. So yeah, I just fell into it. I majored in film in college, and I love to shop. So I had a friend that was a costume designer a million years ago who hired me for a TV series that was filmed in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And so I mainly worked a lot in Virginia. I had never been to Baltimore. I was on a period television series called Tad, where the costume designer was friends with Jimmy. And it was at the end of the show, and she goes, "What are you going to do?" I go, "I don't know what I'm going to do." She goes, "Well, my friend, he works on the show in Baltimore. Do you want me to like give him a call and see like if he's got anything on this TV series he works on?" And I go, "Well, yeah." And so she did that, and then I reached out to we got connected, and he had said, "This is great timing because we're going to have a whole new costume department." And so he said, "Would you like to be the costume supervisor?" And I go, "Yeah, that'd be great." So I came up to Baltimore, and not ever having been there at all. It was like a really great experience for me. And I tell you, this team is amazing. Our costume department, like what we did with the amount of people we have, which is like 4 folks, like it was unbelievable, and the experience really helped me in my career further. It was just like this huge family. It was the best experience ever. Like Amanda and Tina, I just can't believe what you guys did, how you did it so quickly, because it was 7-day episodes, 7-day shoot episodes. And then us, Beeb and I, like on set, dealing with all the crazies, every day was a fabulous experience for us. And, it was like family. It was like incredible. Like I just can't, because now like costumes, like there's like, it's a department of like 15 people. I mean, you can't, there's like, I don't know, maybe in college
Yeah.
little feature films or something, like they have 4 people. But nowadays you've got a coordinator, you have 3 people on set, key in the office. You have just so many people that it takes to do what us little gang of 4 did, which is amazing because like the show looks great. It's timeless. It's just like such an exceptional experience. And I can't, thank Tina and Amanda and Beeb for, just being such a great team. It was awesome. So that's my story.
Yeah, because I said there were like 15 people in wardrobe on the show. At any one time, it was only the small crew, your small 4 people. And that throughout the 7 seasons, there were more people coming in and out. And so what season did you start on, Fletch? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember. Beeb, do you remember? It's been so long ago.
I think you started on I think it was 3.
Yeah, it was 3.
Was it 3? Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
Season 3. Yeah, because I was additional 94, 95. I was a costumer 95 to 98, and then supervisor 98, 99. So that must have been season 3 that you were supervising, I think.
So let's switch back to you, Beeb.
Yep.
So Tina was talking about what her job as a designer is. So Beeb, tell us what you just mentioned a number of titles.
Yeah.
What you came in as, what you worked up to, and what those jobs are for people that have no clue. Like me, I was on the set. Keep saying this through almost every episode. I'm on the set. I don't know what anybody else does except for the guys on the set with me,
Sure. So I started as an additional when I would come in here and there as a day player. I wasn't on the regular crew. And that would just entail filling in whatever gaps. It was Mara and Deb at the time, whatever they couldn't be handling, whether it was dressing background or keeping an eye on the background when we were shooting.
And did they start? Mara and Deb started probably they were on season 1 and 2 then.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But like I would help them set the rooms or wrap the rooms typically. And as a costumer, your main job is on set, being the set costumer, keeping track of the continuity, taking the Polaroids, making sure that if they walk in the room and take off their coat and they put it on that hook, then every time on that line, they got to put that thing on that hook. And that's where you really have to focus. And we had our little teeny tiny TVs watching the little screens, making sure they were doing the same thing every time. In between setups, when lighting changed, you'd run back down to the truck and what needed to be done on the truck. Did a shirt need to be ironed, or did somebody's room need to be switched out? Taking a costume out that they had just changed from, or setting a new costume for the actor to go into after the next scene. And then supervising, we all kind of, we covered each other all the time. We weren't always just on set. Sometimes we would switch and be like, I need a break. There's, I'm dying up here on set. And so we would switch and go back into the truck, and you'd prepare for the next day. That's a lot of the costume supervisor's job, was preparing for what was coming, making sure we had, let's say we were going to have firefighters on the next episode. Let's make sure we have those firefighter costumes in the truck. Or working with the designer or the design team to make sure we pulled outfits for each person for that next episode. And we had everything on the truck that we needed. And then once those costumes were in the truck, they needed to be seamed out. Shoelaces needed to be put in shoes. All the little detail things. Fletch, you can probably help.
No, it was a lot.
Remember what we did too. It was a
Yeah.
lot.
So how are you working? And Fletch, you can talk about your titles and what you did, and in that, talk about what. So if you only have a crew of 4, or so, and we've talked about this with other departments, and people probably don't understand this who are watching a TV show. There's a week of prep going on while you're shooting, and then a week of post-production going on after you're shooting, after that episode's done, while you're shooting this episode. So how are you guys juggling looking at the script and going through and seeing what you need while you have all this daily work to do on the set, in the truck, with that day's episode happening?
Well, like it is like nowadays, it would, a supervisor is like prepping for the next episode while the actual, show is filming. And then that's when they have set people on set and people in the office, key in the office. But it was a small little family of 4 that wore many hats. That, we just made it work. It was just such a great thing. I would be on the truck, like prepping for the next episode, but then also there, like while we're shooting, like either on set, giving Bebe a little bit of a relax, to come back, but she's still working. She's just not on set. She just, would switch out and, prepping for the next day, and then also looking forward for the next episode, like doing a continuity book. But the continuity book was all handwritten, so that was time consuming. Nowadays, you have sync on set, and you can input everything really quickly, well, somewhat quickly, and then but handwriting, the old days, and like with Polaroid, like our continuity pictures were expensive because they're on Polaroid. So that was something that we did back in the old days, and then I can't even imagine like Tina and Amanda like shopping and the tailoring and the fittings, and it's incredible that like. At the end of every episode, they would roll these like racks and racks of clothes that we put onto the truck for the next episode. And then, they'd go back and they'd start prepping we were go, 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 go. But we were all happy. It was like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was just like this great group of people that it's rare to find that nowadays on any show you work on. It just was something about that crew that just is amazing, and just, it was a great experience.
Amanda and I, in our little room up near the ramp, there was that little window that stared directly across to Cooper's, where everybody at the end of the episode would be drinking their ass off, and Amanda and I would be up there pulling off tags and just, like, doing whatever we had to do to prep for the next day because it started a new episode.
Right.
And we, and every once in a while somebody may like run us over a beer or something, but it was like we were always like, motherfuckers,
Oh, it's working.
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of the episode, it was like not a good time for you guys, that's for sure.
And the design part, it's hard because I get a script, I'm prepping while we're shooting, so I need to be on set to establish, but yet I still have to like be shopping or do fittings or whatever, so there's a lot of logistics and scheduling that has to happen to try and make that work so that the design team can be in two places sometimes at once. Sometimes it works out. And that's why it's important to have a strong team and people that have your back, because there are days when I can't get to set to establish because I'm fitting an actor that, is coming in at whatever time. And so I need to trust my supervisors, my costumers, my people to be my eyes to see that for me and to make sure that they're going to look the way the way that I want them to look. So it's,
Right.
Yeah. And that was the days before digital.
Exactly.
So we couldn't even send you a picture of something. You just had to completely trust us.
Exactly. Like now, exactly. Now, they send me, they'll send me a photo on my phone. But then, I remember having pagers.
Yep.
We would,
everybody had
we would
pagers.
like drug dealers, and I'd be in the mall waiting for actors and get their phone and then calling them and hoping they were home, but usually they were partying because they just got a gig, and like standing by the mall phone waiting so I can get their sizes
Right.
so that I could shop for them because they were going to work the next day or the day after.
Yeah.
So I want to jump back real quick, and then I want to talk to Amanda. When you for the listeners, the Polaroid, when you talk about continuity, the Polaroids were, and I imagine this was a pretty big job. You have you have this fairly huge group of actors that are often all on this, when we're on the set, we're on the squadron set, all on the set together. But when the actors come up, just for the listeners so they know, wardrobe would have to take Polaroids of everybody at the beginning of every scene, so they knew who was in that scene and what they were wearing and in what way they were wearing that. Because like maybe they ran in off the street and their scarf's half off when they come up, they run up into the squadron. So they had to establish and take photographs before every scene of every actor and what they're wearing. And like you just said, Polaroids doesn't go into a computer and get shot down to Tina. It's all physical, all handheld, all that kind of stuff is crazy. So Amanda, I want you to talk about what your titles were and what you did. But I also want to say, when I first contacted everybody, I first contacted Tina and Bebe and Fletch. And Tina said, you have to have Amanda on because I could have never done this job without Amanda. So I would love to talk about that relationship between the two of you and what that was, Amanda. What was your like right-hand woman, I think was how she described you.
First of all, you have to know that Tina is such a humble designer, and you don't always see that in the movie business. She tends to be, sorry, Tina, I'm going to talk about you like you're not here.
Thank you.
Yay.
I'm glad my camera's not working.
She's very, she's quiet. I think to be a good designer, you have to be very observant. And I think that you have to be a good listener. And she was able, and I've been able to see this in hindsight more than I was able to see it when I was in it and working with other designers. I think part of her gift is being able to ride the line between the director, the writers, the actor, and the network. And I think that really, and her own intuition as an artist of how she visually sees the character being played and how she can give them the best clothing props to be able to carry out their job as the actor in the role. And so that in itself is like pretty amazing. And she's also was so good with everyone. Like all the actors, fittings are like a huge part of what we do in the wardrobe. We would like get by phone, they would cast someone sometimes days before they played, which always was crazy. So Tina and I would read the scripts. Tina would interpret, right? And another amazing thing that I learned, I think the best thing that I learned was that she does homeless so well. Tina, like when we first used to just drive in the cars together to whether we were going to like a shopping mall, we didn't always go to shopping malls. We went to like East Point Avenue or she would be like, look at the people on the street, and I never really noticed the people on the street. And she was like, this is where I get my inspiration. And so still today, I look at the people on the street. She would be like, look how he has one pants leg rolled and the other one down. Or look at the different layers. Like he's wearing stripes with plaid. Or a lot of times you can't just buy homeless clothes. You can't just go to a thrift store. You have to be able to buy 5 of something because it's shot out of sequence. So you have to have like 5 of the same shirt and 5 of the same jeans. And that in itself, I hope that it's easier now with Amazon or like, but we didn't do a whole lot of like online shopping. So you couldn't just add 5 to your cart. You would like go somewhere and buy the 3 pairs they had, and then you'd go to the other side of town to buy the other 2 that they had. And sometimes you were buying a large and sometimes you were buying a medium, and you just had to hope that it would work out. And then if it didn't work out, you had to return everything. and then so that's a whole other aspect. So while Tina, like, I think was a master at handling all the different things, right? And then Bebe and Fletch were like really unbelievable with dealing with the actors and everybody on set. Tina and I sometimes felt like I especially felt like I was like invisible a lot because you never saw me. I mean, I would basically I was never on set unless I was there to drop something off or to pick up dirty laundry at the end of a shoot day or to drop off clean laundry in the beginning of the day. And there's always like this thing where it's either you're billed as the costume designer's assistant or the assistant designer. And I have always been an assistant designer. I don't know that I'm the costume designer's assistant. It just was a way, I think, for the union or to figure out how to pay you differently, right? Like one made certain money and one made the other money. I think I made the lower money, but I wanted I was like,
right.
did all the stuff, And Tina taught me, like, no, you don't just take a white shirt and take the tags off and put it in the line. Like, you have to tech it. And I'd be like, what's teching mean? And she's like, you got to dye it with like a little bit of gray, And so I think they think we just go shopping and we just put something on the line and then it's ready to roll. But Tina always was like, it's got to look like it belongs to somebody. It's got to look like it's been in their closet. It can't. And so now I always look at shows and movies and I'm like, they pulled the tags right off of that and threw it right on the actor. So I don't know if that answers any questions, but
yeah, no, that's great.
I mean, when I think back and I'm like, it was 4 of us, it's pretty amazing. We had a lot of day players who came and helped, like, when we would have like a lot of police or a lot of background. And the crazy thing is, like, Tina also did background. It's not just like main, and Beebe and Fletch also had their hands in doing all the background. I will say, I know this about Beebe. She is like a uniform specialist, and that's a really important thing to have been on the cop shows. And I also got to go, like, I would go to the quartermasters, and I would pick up the right stripes or the right patches or the right scrambled eggs, they called it on the hats. And I was always like, Beebe was like, nope, that's not right. You got to get this one. Or, in the beginning, I was always having to go back to wherever, like, there'd be multiple trips. I'll never forget when we were dressing James Earl Jones. I had to he wore suspenders. And I can't tell you how many times I went back to the store because I bought the wrong suspenders. Like, and I had to get the buttons. And anyway, I was very green when I started, and these women taught me how to do it. And I'm forever grateful to have been included.
I'm going to jump up to Beebe and Fletch, who were on the set all the time. Tina and Amanda talked about how their jobs were like constantly prepping, post-production, pre-production. But you guys are on the set every day dealing with the actors. Do you want to give us a sort of feel for like what now? Obviously, we always talk about there was never a typical day on Homicide, because you might start at 7 a.m. on Monday and then start at 5 p.m. on Friday and work, you're working all days, you're working nights, you're on a set, you're on the street, whatever. But so when you came in the morning and got your coffee and got on the truck, what was your day like? And how was it dealing with and dressing actors, and lots of them, all with different personalities? If you want to give us a sort of feel for that.
I mean, the best part was, the PA comes to the truck first and gets your breakfast order from Jimmy's around the corner, and you get a scrapple sandwich, and that was like the best way to start the day.
Yes.
But we would come in, and we had the call sheet, and we'd, you might see 10 cast numbers in the first scene. And the night before, we would have pulled all of those costumes into a certain area. But you just double check it before you leave the truck with the costume. Make sure the shoes are there, or the socks there, the jewelry, because sometimes they might wear the same earrings through different costumes throughout the show. And then we'd start by putting the costumes into the trailer, and there was a certain way that you would lay the costumes out. And I learned really the hard way one time that you don't put shoes in an actor's trailer without the shoelaces in the shoes. I was in the truck, and the door flies open, and Belzer's standing there, and he throws the shoes at me. And he says, next time, put the fucking laces in them. And I was like, oh my God. And I, really quickly put the laces in them. And I was like, you know what? Screw this guy. And I went down his trailer and knocked on the door. I opened the door, and I threw the shoes, and I said, next time, say please. Slammed the door and walked away. So that's how, and when you deal with them like that and you give them back what they give you, they're like, oh, I guess I can't mess with this one as much as I thought I could. And you do get that kind of respect from them, I guess. But for the most part, they were all amazing and lovely.
Huh?
And like,
somebody said, "Ha!"
I said for the most part, Tina.
Some of them.
Who is going to tell the story? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
We've got stories. Trust me. I've got a Belzer story.
There was one actor. There was an actor who we weren't allowed to look at for a period of time.
Oh, yes.
And I tell you what, it's pretty hard to do continuity when you can't look at one of the main actors.
Weird
on set.
Yeah.
Because he because he doesn't like the whole department.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you one thing. All the other baby boys were just great. They were like...
They were lovely.
Andre and Kyle and Clark. They were just the most amazing people to work with. The girls were great, too. Belzer, though, I will tell this story. We were on a busy street. His trailer was across the street, and he flung open his dressing room, and he threw out this belt. He goes, "I don't like this," and it just went boom right in the street. People driving right over it. I was like, "Oh, dude, what's up?" But he was, once you had him he had a few bad days, but they were all like family, and with the boys, you had to treat them like they were babies in order to get them to hang up their clothes right so that things weren't crazy at the end of the night, because we wanted to go home too. I remember that Clark was like one of the best, most organized guys. He always had everything hung back up. But on his last day of shooting one of the seasons, I went into his trailer to get all his clothes out, and he had everything everywhere. It was like all over the place. He had his hat up on this fan. He had like things just everywhere as just a joke, I guess, to say I've been a good boy all year, but now I'm going to be a bad boy.
The one thing I have to say is that like, because we would shoot, and I'm sure you all remember this, we would shoot winter in the summer and summer in the winter.
Yes.
And somehow it was the wardrobe and the costume departments.
Yes.
Like it was we made that decision. Like, I'm sorry you have to wear an overcoat. I didn't write that it was snowing and it's fucking July. Like, go take that up with somebody else that's gets paid a lot more money than I do, or and
Cry me a river.
And so that was like, we would always have to come up with like, who didn't have shirt sleeves underneath their trench coat. We would cut the sleeves off their suit jackets and stuff so that they, were cooler, but looked like it was winter, and you still had the sweaters.
Definitely,
that was the biggest struggle, in one of the biggest struggles that I had on the show, because then they would also like take pictures of themselves dressed full winter with like blooming flowers behind them. And I'm like, this is not like, if it was up to me, you'd be in shorts and a t-shirt. Like has nothing to do with me or my department.
Right.
Go talk to Tom Fontana and the network.
Yeah.
And because it was such a big ensemble cast, we didn't have like 4-5 semis with 10 dressing rooms. So did you have to hopscotch them between dress? How did you get them all dressed if we were all on let's say it was a squad room scene where everybody's there. Are people sharing how did you get them all dressed if we didn't have 10?
No, they were two bangers. I think there were two bangers, right? And they had the big truck that all the day players would go in.
The honey wagon.
Not one of those guys like had their own like fancy schmancy, like Tom Cruise truck or anything, dressing trailer. They all were in two bangers.
So did they have to wait their turn to wait
bangers
by turn to go get dressed?
No, they had it.
Everybody had their own room.
They came in, right?
They did. They really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they all had their own rooms.
Everybody had their own. Yeah. But they switched around. They didn't always have the same one.
Yeah, the same one, yeah.
So once you get everybody dressed and get everybody on the set, and it also was a little different from other TV shows I worked on. Other TV shows I worked on, you come in at 7, there'd be a rehearsal, there'd be lighting, there'd be all this time, right? And this show, you are expected to have the camera not on the set. The camera is expected to be on the set at call time. Not a half an hour after, not like get on the truck and put the camera together at call time. You're supposed to be on the set. So did that push you guys, because you had to have everybody dressed and ready for rehearsal? And then did you have much time after rehearsal to adjust things? Because of the way the show worked and it just never stopped moving, how different was that for you, maybe from other network television?
I think we were stealthy, weren't we, Bebe? We would like go in, like I didn't ever feel like we were stressed in any way. Like those guys, like, yeah. I mean, if anybody was waiting, they were waiting on the boys because they were outside hacky sacking, you know what I mean? Or we were trying to find, Steve Buscemi would always disappear when he was directing that episode. And there'd always be going, does anybody have a 20 on Steve Buscemi? And it became like a thing after he had left. And anytime an actor was, or a director was missing, or an actor was missing, they go, does anybody have a 20 on Steve Buscemi? I mean, it just became an ongoing thing. Do you remember the Law and Order at the crossover? Remember how Benjamin Bratt, he was such a good, like, so sweet. Those actors were so well trained and fat. They were like, he would always hold his own coat, and he'd always put it aside, like, do this, he'd take it. He was always great. They were really respectful. And then 2 days into him being on set, he's like disappeared. He's outside in the street. He's hacky-sacking with everybody. All the other actors, his coat's on the ground. I'm like, it took him 2 days to all of a sudden become like our actors. What is up with that? I mean, I was like, Brett, what are you doing? So, I mean, it's just like all these actors would come, and then, our guys like were just like didn't know their marks. They knew their marks. You know what I mean? It's just like, it was crazy. It's just like, again, it's like a dysfunctional family, kind of. And we were all a family. So,
right.
But professional, but yes, a little bit unprofessional at times.
Do you guys remember, like, when we would do the bloody, all the murder scenes and stuff, and that always seemed rushed because it was always like at the end of the night, and blah, blah. And we would always say we're lighting, because for some reason, if lights, like the grips and electrics always got the time, the camera department always got the time they needed.
Sure.
But for some reason, hair, makeup, and wardrobe was always like, get in, get out. You don't, and blood scenes were hard, and it took time, and we couldn't do it in 2 minutes. So we would always be like, we're lighting.
Right, exactly. That's why they called us camera donnas.
And there was a lot went into that.
Yeah.
That was
so much fun.
The whole blood thing was one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, me too.
And even when we just had BG in the morgue scenes, we're like, how are we going to kill this guy? Let's put scissors in his back, or let's do. But you would also be like, okay, so the person was standing up when they got shot, so the blood has to run this way, but then they were down on the ground, so then it's got to run this way. And it was also a collaboration between makeup,
props,
and wardrobe and props, because the skin was makeup, the clothing was wardrobe, and then anything that was on the set was for props to do. So we would they would do their makeup, would do their blood first, and then we would follow, and then props would follow with their blood. So it was all this kind of collaboration.
Oh, the actual blood had those 3 designations. That's interesting.
Yeah, we had blood etiquette. Yeah, we used blood etiquette where we would be respectful of the other departments, and how, like, where they're laid would be, we used to call remember, B, we would call all of us blood, sweat, and tears. We got this blood, sweat, and tears.
Yep.
And we would also, we had a tech advisor that, like, if there was one episode where a guy had, I guess, had put a gun in his mouth and had blown his, brains out. And so we would always depend on talking to our tech advisor about, like, where would the brain matter go? Where would it go, up or back? It was gross what we were, like, asking, but we were so infatuated with making sure that it looked exactly like it would look if it had really happened. So that was fun. We kind of were gory, but we had a lot of fun. And it was artful too, right?
Do you guys remember, blood is just corn syrup and food coloring, and then you add a little bit of chocolate syrup to it to get a little bit deeper texture. But do you guys remember Blood Wedding, which was Danvers' fiance was shot in the bridal shop in her dress, and he got blood on him. And we had to do, he wore the same outfit throughout that episode. And so we had to take that blood from fresh, bright red blood the minute it lands on him to
darker,
dark brown blood that had been aged. So I remember pricking my finger and putting my finger onto fabric, I think a white shirt, and taking a Polaroid. This is what it looked like immediately. This is what it looked like after an hour. This is what it looked like 12 hours later. This is what it looked like. And then taking that prop blood and adding different things to it to make it have those darker colors. Because he had like maybe 4 or 5 different shirts, and one was the fresh blood and one was the darker blood. And
fascinating.
that
I love it.
was super, super fun to do.
Yeah.
And that was all just kind of making it up as we went along.
I mean, we distress now. Now I can't distress anything. I have to hire a whole team. Like, but we would blowtorch. We'd run stuff over with cars. Like everything. If we had to distress something, we did it ourselves.
An ager dyer. Yeah.
An ager dyer, right?
Ager dyer. That's a job?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yes.
This is fascinating.
That's a job.
And the ones who are good are amazing. I've worked with some amazing people.
So what were the brains?
Probably like cottage cheese or...
Weren't they like scrambled eggs? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. There was a time we did, we had a decomp body that was found, I think, when it was cold out, and it was all about the maggots on the body. And, you know, I'm at Crafty, like walking around like, okay, so what could we put? Take a banana and mash it up and like put some banana around the wound. And then, oh, look, there's rice. That looks like maggots. Cool. And we'll put maggots on, you know, just anything that we would find, like just I don't know. We did a lot of winging it, I feel like.
So along with that whole, and Fletch and a couple of you all use the word family while we're talking about what it was like to work on the show. And a couple of you, I think before we started recording, talked about like the motto and the philosophy. You know, a lot of us had, you know, those sort of go words and jokes and things to get through the day. And somebody mentioned you guys had something like things that you had taped up in the trailer. So talk about that a little bit. Like what was your sort of department philosophy, motto, things that like kept you going when Belzer's throwing wardrobe out of the truck at you?
Well, we put the war in wardrobe.
Yeah,
this was our main,
that's right.
Our main one. But I want to show you guys, this is the label from one of our continuity books. And it says episode 713, The Same Coin, director Lisa Cholodenko. And then underneath it says War is Hell. So we would always have a subtitle of the episode on our continuity books with the word war in it. So that was one of our little, everything had war in it.
I love it.
I mean, and this was probably maybe not the third season, but maybe by the fourth season, that was kind of became our thing. Because it was kind of like a battle sometimes to get our time, to get everything done. Like, we were fighters, the 4 of us, you know, we were scrappy.
I mean, we were doing like 6 company moves a day almost, or 5 or 4, right? I mean, like now and show like films or TV series, like it's like one, it takes like all day. And so it's stressful. Yep. You know what I mean? It's like we were like, pack them up, let's go, you know? And just over and over. You remember that.
Sure do.
Everybody.
Yeah. And I will say that I do remember that attitude of like, yeah, camera and grip and electric can have their time. But then it's like, come on, where's wardrobe? Come on, hair and makeup, get in there. You know, it was sort of almost like a lack of respect for your jobs and how important they were. And obviously we all worked as a family, not just interdepartmentally. But that certainly had to be, you know, add some stress to it.
I think that it's still, I don't know if you guys feel this, but I feel like it's still that way. I think because everybody gets dressed. So everybody thinks that they can do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say is, but not everybody wears a wedding dress every day. And how many dresses did you try on or your wife try on before she picked that one? So, you know, I definitely feel like, and I know now, like at this point in my career, I'm not working with people that don't respect me. Like, I just don't take the job.
Quick question on this theme. I've always had a pet theory. Is it because a lot of the time men are ADs or directors and so they just don't understand the intricacies of these things? Because I worked on something years ago where I kind of where I witnessed this sort of hostile attitude from the sort of AD department toward costume and makeup, and it was male dominated. And then I've subsequently done some projects involved with a lot of makeup and things, and suddenly like realized how complicated hair is and stuff, which a lot of people just don't understand. And I've always wondered whether that might be a factor too.
I don't find it a mental because I've worked with a lot of female ADs and they have the same attitude. You know, I do think that it's because everybody combs their hair and, gets dressed in the morning so they think, oh, that's, like they have no idea that we might have had to go to 7 stores to find that one shirt, or that you take for granted. And like, I always say that if people don't notice the costumes, then I did a really good job, because it shouldn't look like a costume. It should look like, yes, they came from their house and they walked on the set and they're acting and they're the person who you think they are on screen, and no one had anything to do with that. Like, that's, to me, is when I do a good job, when people that, when they think that way, but that's not, in fact, how it works. It takes a lot of work and effort and,
Yeah.
And Chris, just so you know, 2 of our wardrobe women, significant others, were assistant directors. So that's a great sort of question. Was there a better understanding? Because Bebe and Fletch both had assistant directors working on the show who were their significant others. Did that make a difference?
I think so, absolutely. And I know that it carries over to Frank's other jobs, because he always talks about the costume department's always his favorite. And he always makes sure that they get their time. And hair and makeup too. I mean, he's good about that, because he gets it. Because he hears my frustration when I come home from a job. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't even do last looks. And sometimes that did happen on Homicide too. Like, Yaphet's in the wrong tie because he got confused in his trailer and put the same tie back on that he had just taken off.
Or he decided he really just wanted to wear a red tie that day and didn't want to change.
There was that too.
Love it.
But yeah, I think that Frank's relationship with me absolutely helped him with that understanding. And giving us the time. And I've worked with some ADs who are as good about that, and then others that just come on, hurry up.
Right. And Fletch's husband's gone on. He was did he start as a PA or as a second, and now he's working as a first?
I'm pretty sure he was a PA first, and then became a second.
So he got to see the whole 9 yards.
Second.
The whole 9 yards too.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll kick off with Tina. Are there any particular episodes that really were sort of challenging for you, or on the flip side, very enjoyable for you?
I mean, the season thing was a challenge. The shooting, and that was almost for the whole show. Shooting winter in July in Baltimore was always rough, because the actors just didn't want to wear their clothes. So that was my most challenging thing.
Because there's one episode in season 6 where, it was a squad room shootout where a lot of things, a lot of people suddenly getting shot at and stuff, or you've got even Sniper as well.
Yeah, I always like Bebe. I loved the blood. I love, like, that to me was I loved, I also loved Homicide because everyone was real, and that's the kind of designing that I like to do. It's like people say, "Oh, Tina likes ugly," and I do. So, but yeah, the blood to me, and that, like, I remember that episode, like, crouched behind, like, helping them fill squibs up because we were, like, running out of, shirts and that kind of on the go stuff. I love that type of work that doesn't exist nowadays.
The run and gun of it all was great. Made it exciting.
Yeah.
I think also, like, every now and then we'd get like a day player, and I'm not
like Luther. And what what about the lady? Was it her sister? Yeah. Or Lily Tomlin.
Can we talk about Lily Tomlin?
Please do.
Oh my God. The hat.
The hat
episode.
The hat.
Do you want to tell a story?
I don't know.
Tina?
I do remember having to fit her in her hotel. I think it was the night before she worked. People telling me that she had like she was like a germaphobe or something, so like I was gonna have to wear gloves, like,
Oh.
and none of that was true. She was interesting.
So Tina got her, for her costume, a vintage hat because she was an older person and she, this was part of her character, was this hat. And it had netting on the front of it. And because it was old, the netting kept coming apart. And we would glue it back together. And then as soon as it was put on and then stretched over her face the way it was supposed to be worn, the net would pop open again. So it became my job with tweezers and super glue while she was in the makeup chair with my hands shaking because I was so afraid she was going to yell at me, and trying very hard not to super glue the netting to her nose. Just piecing together these little pieces of netting with super glue and tweezers, all, just so nervous because, what if I glued it to her face?
Oh my goodness, can you imagine?
It'd be horrifying.
Well, especially with her.
Yes, because she was, she had to sing. And, she was under, I think, a tremendous amount of strain on that one because part of her character was she was a singer and she had to sing in that long ride in the car. And I think that was hard for her.
Yeah. And so you didn't, if it was a vintage hat, you didn't have a double for that.
Yeah.
So that was a scary thing off the bat. You didn't have a double for the hat for the main actress. Right?
No.
Wow.
It was just the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit like she didn't destroy it in a fit of temper or something, because as you mentioned, bells are throwing things out the door of the belts. Imagine that the hat.
Yes, right.
I would have to go into hair and makeup every day and put the hat on her head.
That would have been bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tina, I don't know if you want to tell the story because I feel like your perspective on it is better maybe than mine, but episode 4, season 4, Thrill of the Kill with Jeffrey Donovan and our friends Kyle and Andre and what they decided to do with their costumes.
Ooh.
I still have PTSD from that. What, they both wore plaid.
Oh, right, for that scene where they're pretending they're,
right? They both wore plaid with baseball hats.
Oh, is that what? Yes, but they're doing the road thing. Yeah.
And it was like in the middle of the night, whatever it was, and I wasn't there.
Yes,
because we were probably prepping or doing something, and I had, and they, Tom was so mad.
So they came up to us. They came up to me and Fletch, and they were like, "We think that we would be in disguise, and we wouldn't be wearing our suits and our overcoats. We'd be wearing like something a trucker would wear." So they wanted flannel, wool, plaid shackets, basically. And I feel like one of them had a baseball cap, but didn't one of them have like a Elmer Fudd-ish hat on?
I think so, yeah. I think that might have been Andre.
And so, it's probably 2:00 in the morning. We're on an unused highway in the middle of nowhere, and we were like, okay, that's what they want. They talked the director into it, and we shoot it. And that was bad. We got in a lot of trouble for that one. Because they looked ridiculous.
Because Tom was pissed. Tom was pissed. It was, in his, the one thing with, Tom, his writing is so good that you don't want stuff to take away. Like, I've done other shows. I've done Kimmy. I've done where the costumes are part of the story. You know what I mean? It's just like what the person's wearing is as important as the joke and or what the person's saying. But on Homicide, that was not the case. I've worked on a lot of Tom shows. On Tom shows, that's not the case. And so, yeah, he was really, really mad. And I think eventually he understood that.
What was that? What was
it? Wasn't.
Why was it bad?
What are we supposed to do?
From Tom's point of view?
Even if we said no, if the director is saying yes, I mean, I have a story of Yaphet. All of a sudden, do you remember the tie? Wanting to, I can't remember what scene it was, but he wanted to wear a red tie. And he didn't have a red tie on in scenes prior, but for this one particular scene, he wanted to wear a red tie. And there were producers there, and no one would stand up to him.
Oh, no.
And I remember going into, I was in the box with him, and I'm trying to like have a rational conversation with why he wouldn't wear this thing. And he starts to scream at me and bang on the desk. And I'm just standing there going, hit me, because I'm going to sue your ass. Just hit me. And he didn't. But there was like a grip underneath the desk, and he came out after the whole thing happened. He goes, "Yeah, I swear to God, if he would have hit you, I would have gotten out of the thing." But not one person stood up to him. And then Tom realized that like there's only so much that we could do. We can try and rationalize, we could try and have adult conversations, but in the end, it's the actor and it's the director, and in the end, it's the actor.
Well, he would even do funny things. It's kind of funny about the whole tie thing. It made me remember there was one time where he would reset himself with a crooked tie.
Interesting.
And then he would tuck his tie in at the top of the scene and fix it, because that's what JFK used to do. And he wanted to emulate him. I just like that just popped into my head. That was just an odd thing. Because I would always try to fix his tie. You always want to start with it straight so it stays that way. And he's like, no. I'm doing something here. I'm gonna start with it crooked, and I'm gonna fix it.
And his character famously wore trainers as well with a suit sometimes, and that was inspired by him directly. Or
trainers here in the United States is athletic shoes.
Yeah, that's because his feet hurt. And it was not. I mean, in my recollection, that was not really a character thing. That was just because his feet hurt.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and then it became a character thing.
Right. And his Sans About pants. Oh my God.
Sans About pants.
Which we had Giorgio Armani labels made.
Oh, brilliant.
That we sewed into every pair.
There you go. And the fact that he's not around anymore is good, because he didn't know that.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
No. I'm saying it's good that he didn't know that, right? You don't want him to know that.
I would never say this if he was still living. Sorry.
Because he wanted high end.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I had heard that he insisted on Italian suits because his character was Italian. And I always wondered, like, seriously, are they really going out and buying like $2,000 Italian suits for him?
Well, first of all, they didn't come in his size at the time. And no.
So you sewed labels in. I love it.
I do remember it's going to the accountant going, don't ask questions. Just, this is going to save us money in the end.
But he looked very smart. He looked great. He did. He really did. So it worked. It worked even if it was all smoke and mirrors.
Yes. Well, it all is smoke and mirrors.
Everything is, right?
Any other standout episodes for anybody?
What I remember the most challenging episode were two things. One of them was when we were filming in a really kind of bad area of town, and it was the day that O.J. Simpson's verdict was going to come out, whether he was guilty or not. And we were told by production, because we were shooting in a kind of a bad area, that if O.J. Simpson was to be found guilty, that we needed to just drop whatever we were doing and get out, because they thought that people were going to come out with guns or, shoot from the windows. I mean, that's the area that we were in. And I remember thinking to myself, OMG, I cannot believe I'm working on this TV show and I'm in an area where I might get shot today. And this is cray cray. So, it was a big deal. And we were all listening in when the verdict came, and we were all pretty kind of sadly happy that he was, not guilty. So that was one of the most challenging days that day. Another fun, challenging thing that happened was when we did the Subway episode, and Andre Brower and I had become super addicted to Mike and Ike's. And leading up to the subway episode, we were told that no one was supposed to bring down any food at all into the subway. And Andre gave me the day before this huge, I don't even know where the heck he got this humongous bag of Mike and Ike's. It wasn't a box. It was a huge bag of Mike and Ike's. And he bequeathed me this bag of Mike and Ike's and said, make sure in the subway you had the Mike and Ike's. And I was like, OMG. I was like, okay, I will do anything for you. I will make sure you have the Mike and Ike's. So, and that's so funny because he had also asked Joe, which was my boyfriend and now my husband at the time, who was a PA. He had asked Joe during the shooting down in the subway to get him a pound of cheese. And he said, and to make sure that this pound of cheese is cut into small squares. And Joe made sure that he got the pound of cheese cut into little squares for him in the subway episode. So that was kind of pretty interesting. These little things that we did for our actors that we love so much.
Yeah, the subway. That was such a crazy.
That was amazing.
That was amazing, but I also remember it being like an incredible, stressful for everybody, like all departments, right? Because he got twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had to have the fake legs dressed and underneath the car. And who was that? Did you dress the prop legs and then props dealt with the legs once you dressed them? That goes to props and it gets attached to the train?
That was that was Jeff. Jeff
and
I
Brooke.
think handled those legs as I recall. Yeah, Jeff and Brooke maybe. But yeah, we would have to dress them and put the shoes on and
then just him being stuck, stuck against the train with his wardrobe being all messed up, and then him being very, very almost physically violent in his performance with everything moving around. I mean, that must have been challenging too, even though it's just, it was a very, once the accident happened, it was a very sort of small, contained scene, mostly between him and Andre. But then you've got this 100 people, the EMTs and the fire people and the extras flying around. In a situation like that, how many other day players would you have dealing with people, or did you, with a big background stuff like that?
I don't really remember hiring that many day players.
No. I think on something like that, we would just decide that we were both, Fletch and I would both be on set for a scene like that, or whomever it was that was working at the time. Like whatever had to be done in the truck could be done later. We needed to be on set, taking care of all these people.
So if pretty much all you gals, this show, although maybe not the first thing you did, was fairly early in your careers. But then you went on to do like tons and tons of other amazing stuff, features and other amazing television series. Can you talk a little bit about how different this show really was? Different in the way it was put together, in the way we shot it. It was really different. And how different did that feel, either coming from more traditional filmmaking and coming here, or going from that non-traditional TV filmmaking, going on to more traditional stuff? Was there an adjustment period, or how different was that for you all? I know how it was different for camera, but I don't know how it was different for other people.
I mean, I think for me, it's when I'm on, I do mostly commercials now. I jump in and out of shows occasionally for short periods of time. But I'm mostly on commercials, so that's extremely different. But when I jump back on a show, I'm always just astonished by the amount of time that we have in prep and the amount of people that we have working in the department, and how all the jobs have been like whittled down into you do this thing and you do this thing and you do that thing. And it used to be I did all of those things. And so, and what do you mean we have a month of prep for this? What, like a full 4 weeks of prep before we even start, before we even get a camera up? That's not how, I mean, I don't remember how much prep we had before a season started. Do you,
Probably
Tina?
3 weeks, 3 to 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
And does that mean then you had to juggle the prep as the show's shooting for the next episode?
Oh, yeah. Because we don't have, I mean, we usually didn't have scripts. We would have the first script. Maybe we'd have the first 2, but we didn't have the whole season. So, on a show like Homicide or I've done other kind of procedural shows, it's like, for us, we'll build closets for people, especially the main people, because they're detectives, so this is what they're going to do for a living, this is what they're going to need, and then per episodes, if they have like a wedding or something, you go and shop for that separately. But so we start to just build closets and build, like, we may, sometimes they'll say, hey, there's going to be a bunch of episodes with fire department, so then we'll start to like gather that kind of stuff. Like, we'll have some prep and understanding about that, but mostly all the day players and everything, that's from episode to episode. So Amanda and I would have literally 7 days to prep for an episode, shop, fit, have all the clothes ready. We would try to do it day one. I mean, like, sometimes it was possible, sometimes it wasn't. And while we were shooting the current episode, and that would mean trying to be on set and checking background and, you know what I mean, doing all that kind of stuff. So it's, pretty fast paced.
Yeah, we would get a script, and if we were on set doing continuity and taking care of the actors' clothes and so forth, and we'd have a desk right off of where the elevator was. That was kind of our little station where we would work if we weren't shooting in that area. And we would have our binder, and we would start breaking down the script, and we'd be doing that as we were minding the set. We would break it down. In between ironing, 20 to 30 shirts a day.
And cutting yourself open so you could do blood tests.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Putting the blood, sweat, and tears literally in it. Wow.
That's right.
Okay, where are we, Chris?
Memories of working with Jim Finnessy in the production office.
He was a gift. I loved him.
Because explain that gift part.
He was extremely tough, but loving. I don't know. He was a character for sure. I think it helps if he likes you, for one thing, and he liked me, so that made things a little bit easier. But he was kind of like one of those special people that you work with in your life, and you just carry the lessons that he taught you through life. And the most important one was keep it simple, stupid. I mean, he drilled that into us. And time is money. Like, just let's go. Like, make it the simplest thing that you can and get it done. And don't worry about all this other fluff. I recall, I think one of the reasons why I just really loved him so much, there was a time when I was day playing, and this was the story about Yaphet. He left in his costume to go home to eat lunch, and he came back, and he came up for rehearsal, and I was like, guys, he didn't change. Like, he's in the wrong costume. He's got to change back. And I was very green, very new. I was filling in for Deb. So it was like, good job for me to realize that he was in the wrong costume. They shuttle him downstairs real quick, bring him right back up, and he's wearing the wrong tie. And, Mara comes upstairs and she shows me the tie. She's like, he's got the wrong tie on. And I'm like, oh my God, my career's over. I burst into tears. I'm never going to work again. This is like the worst thing that could possibly happen. So I go up to the director, and it was Lee Bonner. And he's like, who cares? We went into one building and it was sunny out, and we came out of the building and it was raining. Whatever, like, nobody's going to notice. Don't worry about it. And I was still super, super upset about it. And, Mara was like, oh, this is, it's pretty serious and I might have to talk to Jimmy about it. And so Jimmy comes upstairs and onto set, and I think we're out in like the props area, right outside of set at the top of the ramp. And I'm just bawling my eyes out. And he's like, what's the matter? What's the matter? What's going on? So I'm crying and he's hugging me and I'm telling, he goes, who gives a shit? Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? He's like, yeah, whatever. Worse things could happen kind of thing. And I was like, huh, okay. I thought I was going to really, I literally thought I was going to get fired for doing that. And then
because they had already shot the scene with him in the wrong thing. It wasn't before that. It was after it had been shot, right?
Right. We're not going to go back and fix it.
Yeah. That's why you were crying, because they'd already shot it, right? Yeah.
I was devastated. I screwed up. It was my one job that I had to make sure he was wearing the right thing, and he wasn't.
And Lee Bonner, what a good director to have in that situation, to be like totally chill about it, right?
Completely so even keeled, like whatever.
That's great. That's a good Jimmy story. Yeah, and how he kept the trains running, and and he wanted to make sure we got done so that we could be done, right? And go have your life.
Well, he also was a crew person. Like he was a grip, so he knows how hard we work, and he knew, so I do think he respected people that worked hard. He saw who did and who didn't. He was no bullshit, and you come in, you do your job, you keep your head down, and, go to the bar and have a drink.
Right.
Yeah. But he also gave people opportunity. He pushed you into your next level. Oh, you can do this. I think I have faith in you. You can bump up to the next thing. I know he did that for a couple people, me included.
And I do have to say that both, the memories of Homicide and everybody, how they talk about it's a family, and I did Oz in New York, and to this day I still meet background prisoners that say that was the best job I ever had. It was like a family. I've never had another job like that before. And they were like, prisoner number 322. So there was definitely something about Tom and Jimmy and that made people feel, like we were all kind of in the trenches together and we were going to get this done. And
yeah, I definitely remember that about Tom. He would always, when he showed up at the end of an episode, there was always a raising of a glass and thanking everybody. There was always this appreciation, I feel like, that came from Tom for everybody's hard work. And he knew what we were going through. He knew how hard that show was. And you felt that he cared about what we were doing as crew,
Yeah. I also think some of that feeling is because I think we also felt like we were working on something meaningful. Like we weren't working on some fluff or overly violent, uber violent thing to be violent, just to be violent or sensational. That really the content, on top of the crew experience, the content I think made you feel like this is a worthwhile thing we're doing too, in the middle of how crazy it was, but also how much fun it was, Yeah, one of the things that I think struck me when we talk about why it's retained interest 30 years later is also because, I don't, when I watch the show, it doesn't look, and I've said this many times, doesn't look dated to me. Even the wardrobe doesn't look dated. Sometimes there's a hairstyle on an extra that's a very 80s whatever thing happening. But it still looks very Baltimore, workaday. It looks very real. But how sometimes you look at 90s shows and it just looks weird and old. And it doesn't look like that. And that'd be interesting from your point of view as from the wardrobe people, why that might be.
Because it wasn't designer. Like I remember going to SVU, and doing and even when they did the crossover with Law and Order, it was like all their suits were Armani, they were the designers of the moment, and that's not how we shopped. That's not what our characters look like. And so I do think that takes, so it almost was like they were dated even when we were shooting it. Because it was, if you look at men's clothes in the 50s, it's jeans, t-shirts, whatever. It's like if you wear it a certain way, you could wear the same clothes and it looks modern now because there's not like a trend or a fashion to it. And because our people were never trendy or fashionable, and I don't mean that in a bad way, it
makes
doesn't
sense.
date them, it just doesn't get dated.
It's not like they're wearing Jordache jeans, right? I mean, they were just in their work clothes, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The rumpled cops.
I think it just was like classic silhouettes, which is the same thing Tina's saying, as opposed to a shoulder being like, I feel like a shoulder tells so much of the time. Or it's like a shoulder pads or a puff sleeve, or they were like just classic cuts, and I think part of the staying power of the show is the writing and the acting. I mean, I think that the storylines are epic. They are fascinating, interesting, introspective stories about human beings and murder. And I think that the psychology of the show is still fascinating as it was then that it is today. And I think that the chemistry that was happening between the actors on set, you can see that. I mean, the acting is so good on the show that you're compelled. Like when I see it, it's not like I go to watch it now, but if I see it on, I'll watch an episode and I'm like, oh my God, it's so still good.
It is.
And I think you're right. I think it's Tina, you nailed it when you were like, it's almost like the clothes were dated when we shot it. It was like, so you're never like, I mean, every now and then we do something that was like, we did the nameplate necklaces.
Right.
Hmm.
I mean, I was going to
Or,
say, like, if you look really, the urban kids don't dress the way, but in some places they probably still do, like big baggy jeans and is not a silhouette right now. So that's a little bit dated, but in people's minds, that's what urban kids look like, even though that's
And the
not what
puffy
urban
coats.
kids look like today. Like,
Right.
and I'll have fights sometimes with, especially older producers. We'll have a young African-American kid and I'll put him in, skinnier jeans and like nice sneakers and whatever. And they'll be like, and he's supposed to be poor. And they'll be like, he doesn't look poor. And I'm like, go look at poor kids. And you know what I mean? Like that's like your image of what those kids look like is not the reality. They're still thinking everybody wears baggy jeans, hoodies, and big gold
Interesting.
chains.
right.
Right.
I also think it's interesting that nameplate necklaces then went on to make their debut on like Sex and the City, and like, so it's interesting how things, change and some stuff's just, I still wear a nameplate. I actually still have 2 of the nameplate necklaces from the show.
Wow.
I still have I still have the black vest that Clark. Do you know what I'm talking about?
By the way, I should just say this. Tina and I together, I think had the most outrageous fashion ever. She and I not only did we do the wardrobe, we also had the most fun. Tina, I mean, I think I saw her hair multiple blue. I saw different colors.
I have a funny story. I went on an interview for a job and Barry Levinson was the producer and he was in the room and he looks at my resume and he looks at me and he goes, I should know you.
Right.
And I was like, yeah. And he goes, he goes, you had blue hair. And I was like, yes.
That was me. Right.
But
That's funny.
Amanda and I would go shopping in like all over that. Like sometimes the cops would stop us because they'd be like, "What are these two white girls doing in this neighborhood? They must be looking for drugs." Like,
Interesting.
I mean, and we would be in like, I remember I used to wear like these platform tennis shoes, and I always had my own style, but Tina had like this New York punk rock edge. And so together, like we would bounce off of each other. And then somehow along the way, Shorty became a part of the story, which Shorty was like this dog that we found. All of us really found him across the street from Penny at the Grind. And Shorty is like the fifth member of like the wardrobe department.
Aw.
Yeah.
And
Short Dog. He's the greatest.
Short Dog. I mean,
he was Short Dog was part of our department.
And he would go to Crafty, and like we would be like, you know, had no idea. And Shorty would be, you know, it was like a big family. And
It was.
going back to what like Chris, you were saying about the like the like period of transition, I don't think I ever really found that same dynamic in any show that I went on to. I went on to The Wire. First I went to The Corner, and then I went to The Wire, and then I worked in hair and makeup, and there was never the dynamic that I had here. It was so special. And I've never worked with a designer that I've clicked with. So, I mean, I talk to Tina, you know, every week, you know. I see Beeb when I come back to Baltimore. Fletch, I never see, but that's because she lives in Hawaii. But I still keep in touch with everybody here for the most part. And I think that's really something to say after all these years, that we still pretty much know what's going on in each other's lives.
Yeah, and you can see somebody who you haven't seen, like, you know, especially at the reunion. My God, my cheeks hurt so bad from smiling, having seen people. But like, you remember the love that you had, and it was just like you would see someone being like, "Oh my gosh, I love that person," and they're here, and it was so overwhelming. And I, you know, if I feel that way, sometimes, you know, Frank will be on the phone with Jeffrey Gordon, and I'm just like, "Oh, jiggity Jeff, hi."
We're gonna have them on next week.
I miss you.
I'm gonna talk to them.
Oh, they're the best, Brooke.
Yeah.
But one thing, going back to the whole look, you were talking about the look of the show and how it's timeless and so forth. But what's interesting is if you think about like Munch, his silhouette was very old-fashioned for the time. You know, he wore those thin vintage ties, and he had those skinny lapel suits. You know, he was very 60s. So that was his image. So it can't really be dated because it's dated, if that makes sense.
And what's funny is I did SVU, and then he was we had shipped everything over to SVU and then I ended up being on SVU, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't get away from these ties.
But then, you know, even Melissa's character, she couldn't stand new things, so you often would buy her some vintage.
Right.
I just remember, like, she would have some vintage pieces, but like one time you gave her, I don't know, maybe it was a new vest and a new jacket, and she just spent the whole day just kind of like, I can't wear it. Like, she just felt like smothered by the clothes because they weren't Kay's clothes. They didn't feel
She
right
rumpled
for her.
them in, huh?
Because she had things that were, you know, bought at secondhand stores. And then Max Perlich, his whole look was vintage.
His was like 40s look. Yeah, true. I had never thought about that. Yeah.
I think that kind of helps. Yeah, that helps make it seem less, you know, because it wasn't that trend of that day. It was, you know, these guys were wearing some vintage or used clothes or whatever. But speaking of ties, I have a funny. Technically, sometimes the clothing can be an issue for the sound department. And Bruce Latecki, I remember him coming into the wardrobe office and taking the ties and rubbing them with his hand up to his ear and saying no, and then the next time no, and you know, like he was governing what ties we were going to put on. It's like, dude, figure it out. Like, this is what they're wearing. This is established. These are the fabrics that we're working with. Like, we don't really have control about over that so much. He was very particular about the sound of the clothes and.
Yeah. Just talk about silhouettes for a moment. I was just thinking of I picturing Andre in my mind and his how would you call those braces?
Suspenders. Yeah.
Suspenders. Yeah. What was the philosophy behind his look? I loved his look. It was just he always dressed in that way.
Body type, partly.
Yeah. Well, they established him pretty preppy, I think, right from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely preppy, professorial.
But we'd have to make his pants at one point. We had to, we were getting his pants. Yes, stay away.
It was all that cheese. He used to walk in from Crafty with a bowl of cheese cubes, just eating them. They're like, oh my God, no, your butt's going to get bigger.
I do remember somebody saying to me, like, you can't wear belts and suspenders. And I'm like, well, they have to because they have guns,
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to, if you have suspenders, you don't need a belt. But
that's
not on a cop show. Yeah.
I remember coming on the set once, and it was a winter episode, and I look at Andre, and I was like, and he had an overcoat, a winter coat that was waterproof on the outside, and then had like fleecy gray. It was reversible gray stuff on the inside, and I was like, that's interesting. I just bought that coat for myself because I normally couldn't find stuff to fit me with long enough sleeves and stuff like that. So I would go to the men's department, and it was at what's the fancy department store at the Town Center? I can't think of
Nordstrom.
Nordstrom's. It was from I went to Nordstrom's into the men's department and bought myself a winter coat, and I go on the set. It's Andre's coat, which goes to talk about the way that you bought things off the rack that were real people clothes. I mean, that was real people clothes. It wasn't Armani. It wasn't what it was. It was something I could actually buy at a department store. And I still have that. I still have that coat. Great coat. Really terrific coat.
That's awesome.
So, Chris, do you want to ask your signature question?
Oh yes, yeah. So you sort of mentioned Scrapple earlier, but we've been asking people about sort of food memories of Baltimore because the camera team were living off gizzards and the writers were living off Scrapple and coffee apparently. But what were you guys sort of surviving on?
Or your favorite things?
Or your favorite places as well? What were your food memories of Baltimore?
The few things that I survived on when I was working on Homicide were about 3 things. They were cigarettes, powerhouse sandwiches from the grind, which were amazing, and lots of red wine. That's what got me through all of it. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think that Pat Moran coined the frozen coffee drink from the grind as the velvet. What did she call it? Velvet.
It was a grenada, right?
Yeah, it was a grenada, but she called it the velvet jolt, I think is what she called it, a velvet jolt. So that was delicious. Anything really from the grind was great. But the Scrapple sandwiches for me from Jimmy's, and I was a big fan of when the Teamsters would go into Lexington Market and get a big old thing of chicken livers.
Yeah, me too.
Throw some hot sauce on it. That was fantastic.
The livers and the gizzards when the Grips Electric would get it from like the corner stores where we whatever neighborhood we happen to be in. I was like shocked the first time I had was like, oh my God, that's so good.
It was delicious.
I think the first 2 years I probably lived off. I remember Brooke and Jeff they had like a promotion for Jiffy Pop. So I got boxes and I would literally just eat Jiffy Pop every dinner. I didn't have plates. I had Ford's kid's bed, his son's bed and dresser. But yeah, Jiffy Pops. But then I do love the shrimp and crab cakes. And still to this day, try and replicate them.
Best crab cakes. Amanda, how about you? Any food memories?
Coffee and cigarettes.
Yeah, that's true. And Diet Coke.
Yep.
It was Diet Coke. I mean, how often were we just sitting on the back of the prop truck just drinking a Diet Coke and smoking a cigarette? That's just what we did.
Right. And on the set, and in between.
Yeah. Ford would know my car because it would be Diet Coke cans, MapQuest maps for me to get to because we used to have to print out, like we didn't have GPSs or anything, and cigarette cartons in my back seat.
I remember passing cigarettes around, in between shots when we're working outside, just like, I'm not even a smoker. Just give me some of that, and just passing it back and forth between
Something.
whoever had one at the moment.
Well, that was that in the beginning, at least. I'd say like maybe season 4 or 5. Like, you just walk on the prop truck and be like, "Hey, can I get a pack of cigarettes?" And they're like, "Yeah, here you go." They'd had a drawer full of them, and you just take your pick, whatever
And
kind
now
you
they're
wanted.
like $500 a carton or something unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't think that happens anymore.
Well, cool.
Okay, as we're coming into our last section, does anybody want to talk about what Homicide meant for them in their career and what they're working on now?
No, but I'm available if anybody's hiring.
There you go. Bebe Ferro, find her online. Because you have a website. You have a contact on the website?
I do. Bebe Ferro Styling.
Bebe Ferro Styling. I was just on that today. .com. Check her out.
Yeah.
Oh, I meant to tell you, I was looking through the clips, the clips on your website, and the one with Ray Lewis and Peyton Manning is so good. And just, our football season here was foreshortened. We didn't get into the playoffs this year, but it was so nice to hear Ray Lewis talking about the good old days and getting into the Super Bowl. It was just, but also just really good looking clip, and also their wardrobe looked great. They did. He looked great in his all white. He looked great. I'm sorry.
Well, he showed up in that. I'm not going to take credit for that. He did show up in that. Peyton, I got him dressed, but he had a stylist from out of town send that. But that kind of show, working on Peyton's places and things like that, when you're working with, I think my hierarchy of working with people is I want to work with sports celebrities first, or sports people, and then musicians, and then I'll take the actors. And no shade to any actors who I love and work with, but like when you're in a room where you have these sports legends having a conversation, talking about specific plays that they played, and you're just like, wow, I'm just here listening to this, and I'm getting paid to do this. This is insane. Like, what is my life? Like, this is so cool. And having worked with sports people, I love getting to work on commercials with football players and baseball players. I just think that's the coolest part of my job.
Yeah, that interview was great because, and I'm getting off topic here, but the respect that Ray Lewis and Peyton Manning had for each other, even though Ray Lewis's whole job was to knock him on the ground. It was really interesting.
And Fletch, how about you?
I owe a lot of my career to Homicide Life on the Street because of how incredible our team was, how hard we worked. And, since that time, I've gotten to work on projects in South Africa. I worked on Hotel Rwanda. I went to Paris and was Kate Hudson's dresser. I worked with Terrence Malick on a film in Virginia, but then I went to England to work on it and was Christian Bale and Christopher Plummer and Colin Farrell's dresser, and also the costume supervisor of the project. I've worked with David Fincher. I mean, I've done a lot of really cool things and worked with a lot of really cool directors, but the most coolest thing I've ever experienced was Homicide Life on the Street, because the crew and everyone working on that project were really amazing and really instrumental in building my career and my ethics and my work habits and everything. It was actually the best time of my life, and still is the best time of my life. Right now, I'm working on a project called Untamed for Netflix. It stars Eric Bana, and it's the second season. And I'm very excited about it. We're shooting in Oahu, and we're going to be going over to the Big Island, and then also go to Zion, Utah for the series. And I'm really excited about this project. So it's really good to be working actually where I live, which I live in Hawaii, and I love the crew here too, but nothing is better than the Homicide crew, because they are always going to be the most important people to me, because was the most special time in my life that I've ever had. And, I think Homicide life on the street will go on because, it's meant to be.
Amazing. Tina, you got anything you're working on now or coming up?
No, I just finished the second season of the 4 seasons on Netflix. And in between, I volunteer and work at an animal shelter, which is really what I want to do. So I'm trying to get into semi-retirement so I can kind of just do that.
Do you want to give a shout out to that animal shelter?
Puppy Kitty, New York City.
Puppy Kitty, New York City.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Oh,
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's one of the things on my list I think about when retiring too. Amanda, how about you? So Amanda, you've got your own fashion design studio and art studio combined in Delray Beach, is it? Florida.
Yeah, so I've been here 17 years.
Holy crap.
I know. And I met my husband here, who is also an artist, and we started our own art gallery called Amanda James Gallery, and it's just because his name is James. And it's kind of two things, or it's multiple things under one roof, and he does custom framing, and he's a photographer, and we collect Florida highwaymen, which is just a really interesting niche. It's 26 African-American painters that painted Florida landscape, and they painted during the Jim Crow era, and they were not allowed to show paintings in regular galleries because of the color of their skin. And there's 3 of them still living, and so we collect them, restore them, and sometimes we reframe them, but we have a huge part of our space that's dedicated to their work, and that is a passion, as well as just it brings all kinds of interesting people in, and we feel very lucky to be shepherds of that kind of work. And then oddly enough, I ended up getting into fashion. I make my own fabrics out of my paintings, and I turn them into resort wear, which sometimes when I say this out of my mouth, I actually can't believe it. Because I skate the line between preppy and punk. And that is somehow I'm able to do that here. And I do a lot of I dress a lot of conservative, wealthy women. And it's just every season, and this is my season. So from really January until May, I do a lot of trunk shows, and I go to a lot of over the top communities, and I dress these ladies, and I always feel like somewhat of I don't know, I never quite I'm learning that I do belong there, but sometimes I'm just like this crazy Baltimore girl that had pink hair, and they would never know.
They would
you know
never
what I mean?
know.
I just kind of
In their
camouflage
captives.
in there.
Right.
And sell a lot of fabulous dresses. And I always, most of my shows are connected to a cause. And I donate a lot to either women in recovery or women who have had violence in their lives. So I do a lot to help women.
I'm sorry, and Tina too, say your websites so people could get more info.
So I'm AmandaJohnsonStudio.com.
Okay.
Or AmandaJamesGallery.com.
Okay. And Tina, you have a website too, correct?
TinaNigro.com.
I do want to tell everyone these women have had amazing careers. Please look at their websites and/or check out their IMDb pages and see what they've done and go watch their stuff because they are an amazing group of women.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
And buy Amanda's dresses because
They're amazing.
fabulous, and everyone will compliment you
I have a shirt
and
on
tell you
her.
how amazing you look.
Good.
I have a shirt of
Thank
hers
you.
on today, but you don't see me, so.
Oh, yay.
You did that on purpose, Tina.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Well, thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
So that was the wardrobe department. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Susan, how was it for you?
That was so much fun. I've said in multiple episodes that I think I'm learning as much as our listeners sometimes because, I don't like that word silo that everybody uses these days. But, one thing, especially, and I don't mean to differentiate this from non-union sets, but on a union set, everybody stays in their department, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, we help each other out, but everybody has a very directed job. There's 100 people on the set. Everybody's doing their own job. It looks like chaos, but everybody's doing their own job at once. So I don't know a whole lot about everybody else's jobs because I was so concentrated on my job, and I didn't grow up in part of the industry where I'm doing every job, which is also a good way to learn about filmmaking, is to start on small productions and do every job. I really never did that. I basically started in camera from college, and the first non-union job I did was in camera. So the stories they told about all the different things they have to keep track of and all the different layers of things you have to do in the wardrobe department, from prepping while we're shooting, from going out and buying. And I love what you said earlier in the intro, Chris. Talk a little bit about, what that means in a pre-digital society. What does that mean 30 years ago if you want to get 5 of the same pairs of pants or, 10 of the same shirts?
Yeah, well, as they were saying, they would find maybe 3 of the shirts in one store and then find 2 matching shirts in another store because they have to have 5 of everything. And I particularly enjoyed Tina's story in which she was worried she'd been mistaken for a drug dealer as she was waiting with her pager by a payphone, waiting for measurements to come in from the office, and then she would go and buy those items. And it's a really kind of crazy way to operate, but that was how we used to have to do things. And considering there was only 4 of them, that's really phenomenal. I just loved their little thing about how they put the war in wardrobe, and they were a real sort of tight-knit department who were really kind of on it. So yeah, it was just such a fascinating thing because we take so many things for granted now. With Amazon, you can order multiple items and know it will come at a very specific time if you have Amazon Prime. Not that they're a sponsor, but if you have certain...
Not a sponsor.
No, might as well get SpaceX. They're really into the money at the moment.
Sure.
So no, we live in this age now where there's so many things that can just be delivered, ordered the night before and delivered the next day. And that just didn't exist back then. Especially also the Lily Tomlin story is kind of interesting because obviously they had this vintage hat, and from what I understand, they only had really one of them because it was a one of a kind, and it had some netting on it that was very fragile, and so that was the bit that they could keep replacing. And then on top of that, Lily Tomlin's sort of nerves expressed themselves in a kind of way where she came across as difficult, I suppose is the way to put it, or prickly, and so it made everybody extra cautious around her whilst trying to repair this hat. So it kind of became a bit of a nightmare scenario. But there's so many things we sort of take for granted, really. But yeah, it was a real eye opener, really.
Yeah, and the fact that and I think Lily Tomlin felt a little. I think they described her as being under pressure because of the kind of character she was playing, and she had to sing.
And fast shooting pace too.
Yeah, and not an easy, if you're a guest star, and we're shooting in a way that you've never probably worked on a show or a film that was shot this way, and there's somebody in the back seat with you, or somebody, you're in a confined space in a car with the camera in your face, or in that case, it was the car cut in half.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
But I don't think they even had replacement netting. I mean, what Beebe described was having, like a toothpick and super glue and having to, super glue the net and the net. Just think about the fineness of a netting and having to super glue it back together while it's on Lily Tomlin's face. And the way that hat was worn was the netting was pulled down completely to her chin, which obviously put stress on it. But all those things, and back to the non-digital component they had to deal with. I love the comment that Fletch made was, you couldn't just push a button and add 10 to your cart.
Yeah.
You had to get in a car or be driven, by one of the Teamsters. And how many places, like you said, did you have to visit to find those?
Yeah, because it's not even like you had the internet to find the item and know it's in that shop. You would have to resort to, I guess, paper catalogs, I guess, were the thing back in the day, and magazines.
Or just go and hope whatever you're looking for is in the men's department or the women's department, right? And you go and back then there would have been more large department stores, not necessarily discount stores, but there would have been more, department stores around, like Macy's and Hecht's and maybe not Hutzler's at that point, but Nordstrom's, and places that had large, fairly deep, clothing departments for men and women.
Yeah. And you remind me, actually, you made the comment, and you're right, that the show doesn't look particularly dated. And the costumes don't stand out in a dated way. In most situations, there are a couple of bits maybe where it might, but because they weren't looking for designer stuff, because designers very much of an era. So like if you had Don Johnson, the way he was dressed in Miami Vice, I mean, it's probably coming back into fashion now, actually, but it was a very dated look for many years. So in the 90s, they used to ridicule that look because it was so dated and associated with a particular era. I know the 90s are kind of back at the moment, so there's certainly clothes that I grew up with when I was at school as a teenager that are kind of fashionable again at the moment. It's quite amusing. But to get that timeless style, they were just buying, functional clothes most of the time for the characters and things. And those characters weren't people looking to wear designer items. So that was a really interesting note that not buying designer things actually helps the show kind of almost not end up looking dated. That was very interesting.
Right, exactly. They mentioned Law and Order. They're not in a bunch of Armani suits, right? They're in workaday suits and workaday clothing. And there are no true, and maybe there were less in the 90s than there were in the 80s, but there were no really, I mean, there might be here and there were no popped collars. And how everybody, and I did it, you used to roll your, the sleeves of your jacket up and have like a contrasting shirt underneath and have that rolled up. So you had your jacket rolled up and your collar popped. It was a real look. But that was really interesting that they addressed that, and part of the reason, not just because they were usually doing workaday clothing and people that weren't wearing designer clothing and classic silhouettes on the actors, also that much of the clothing they were using was vintage or from Goodwill or from a vintage clothing store, used clothing store. So the clothing already was not of that era, not like pigeonholed to that era. So I think somebody said, so how do you make old look old? It doesn't look dated because it already was dated, right? Which is really interesting. Yeah, not a bunch of people in Jordache jeans and all that sort of designer style.
Yeah. There's a question I should have asked, actually, not directly related to Homicide, but just in costume design in general. So I'll put it out there, and then if anybody wants to email me afterwards, feel free. There was a short film I watched a few months ago online where basically it was set in this sort of American Civil War era, and these people were all dressed in those sort of particular kind of that particular clothing, but it just looked like I was watching a museum reenactment. It just looked so fake. It looked like just for something about it just all looked too polished and a bit too much like there's yeah, and it's like it just didn't quite work. It just stood out immediately as this costuming isn't quite right. It's not that it wasn't accurate to the period, because it was, but it just all looked, I guess, brand new and out of a museum or wherever they got it. And it just stood out like a sore thumb and immediately took me out of the film I was watching because it just looked too fake.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just read a comment recently about some more recent Civil War film somebody was complaining about. They said, really good film, was fine, but it really bugged me that all the costuming was just too clean. It just looked too good. But was it Beebe who mentioned, or Fletch that mentioned, you never put a new white shirt on an actor, that you have to gray it down first? And she said, but I do see now, you can see now in other television shows that happens. It comes off the rack. It's super white. It goes on the actor. It doesn't look like it's been lived in. It doesn't look like it's seen a washing machine. It just looks new.
Yeah.
And I love the story Beebe told about the blood and the episode. And do we know the name of it? The episode where Jelko, where his wife in the shows gets murdered. And he has blood on his shirt, on his clothing through the whole episode, the same clothing. And so she did a test thing where she pricked her own finger and put it on some material and then noted what the blood looked like after a couple hours, after a day, after a couple days, so that they could dull down Jelko's clothing so it would be correct as far as how long he's had that blood on him. And it's not fresh blood at that point. Really interesting. That attention to detail.
Real dedication there, yeah. I know, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. So, so that episode was Blood Wedding from season 5, and that was episode 10. So, thank you, Google. So Danvers' fiance, unfortunately, was murdered in that episode.
I also loved that they talked about, all these things they had to keep track of. And they also obviously had to keep track of continuity. Like, did you run in off the street with the coat off or half off or over your shoulder? And having to keep track of that, in the script, and then taking Polaroids of every actor in what costume before every shot, or not every shot, every scene, but then during the scene, they're going to move things around. So if they, in this shot, they have their shirt this way and that way, and then talking about Yaphet wanting to start with a crooked tie so he could straighten it up.
Oh, yeah, and then even change colored ties, didn't he? Bless him.
And then, no, I want a red tie now. And at some point it's like, okay, whatever. Like, what are you going to do? And I love the little bit that, because I did think it was a costume choice when he wore his, as you called them, trainers, when he wore his running shoes.
Yeah.
His tennis shoes, whatever you called them back in the day. And that was because his feet hurt sometimes. So it wasn't, a choice of,
because his character gets told off by Barnfather, I think, about dress code or something. There's an episode somewhere where somebody makes a derogatory comment from management about it, but
yeah, and having to do all those levels of things at the pace we were working at, and having to keep up with all that, but that was part of the fun and part of the excitement of working on that show was just getting it done as quickly as possible with the shit. The shit was flying on that. It just was. And everyone's look over at Jean, the cameraman, the second cameraman, and he would just be lit up. He would have this little twinkle in his eyes, and he'd laugh about just the chaos of it. And then it managed to come together in a way that was just really, really new and exciting and such a good show. It just was good. It was good.
Yeah. And then another thing that was interesting was Tina mentioned how she got inspiration for costuming from people on the street. They were her inspiration. She didn't get inspiration from magazines and stuff. And very good note there. It'd be interested to see what that's like these days, because I think people are so much more influenced by media now than they may have been 20 or 30 years ago, but that's a bit of a generalization, I think. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether that rule still apply. But yeah, I think she was talking about like with talking about like addressing homeless people and things. There's another thing like we were talking about earlier with the historical things. Trying to make somebody look quote unquote homeless is a bit of an art in itself as well, because some shows it could look a bit over the top. And ending up getting into kind of what I call Charles Dickens theatre territory, where it's, I don't know, they got charcoal on their face. I must admit, I've always had an aversion to anybody putting charcoal on their face. I feel like you've lost the battle in life if you've got to that point. But
and then the whole thing of people's and directors, stereotypical ideas of street kids, and that you got to put everybody in a black hoodie and baggy pants, and that isn't necessarily go see who's wearing what now, and it stop with the stereotypical ideas of the way people dress or the way they look. And I love that she had her antenna up for that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like how then so that brings us into an interesting area about like expectations. So she mentioned, I think, like she found with some older producers and directors that they didn't understand the street fashion in the way that she did, and so there were like expectations that the street person in the gang should be wearing a hoodie, etc. And then also we had network notes about Tony Lewis and about how they didn't want her looking too ethnic, the word that was used, ethnic. And like there's just so many things, so many battles going on in the making of a television program. So it's like, wow,
right. And that extended outside of wardrobe to her hair, too. Her hair changed multiple times on the show, apparently, while they were trying to figure out what they thought she should look like instead of just looking like Terry Stivers / Tony Lewis.
I know, because I remember her first appearance in the show, she looked amazing because they really lent into her sort of background. And then obviously over time, not that she didn't always look amazing, but it's just she had a very distinctive look in those early episodes, and she was very colourful. And
she was sort of a tough cookie in the earlier episodes, and they softened her, which is what they tried to do with Melissa at the beginning. They tried to soften Melissa at the beginning with the hair and the makeup. And if you watch earlier seasons, Melissa has makeup on, and then you watch later seasons and there is zero makeup on her. I mean, there might have been makeup to look like she didn't have makeup, but they definitely went off from, trying to make her look, I'm sure it was about what she did not want to look like. She did not want to look made up, and that she wanted to have a man's jacket on. And she wanted to be very, very, she wanted to be, a homicide detective.
Yeah.
Not a model.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and she was basically dressed like the other detectives. That was brilliant. And then we had mention of Yafet and his designer suits or fake designer suits. He thought they were designer, and it turned out they were just sewing in labels. I might try that in life.
But they looked good. But they looked designer. I mean, there's a sort of a crisper edge that he has, I think, in later seasons. That I think lent itself to that. Maybe you sort of feel like he matured into this more stylish way of dressing, even though they weren't really Armani. They looked like it.
Faux Armani.
I love your question. What's your favorite food hangouts? What were you surviving on? And for Fletch, it was cigarettes, Powerhouse sandwiches, and red wine. And for Beebe, loving the granitas and the scrapple sandwiches and chicken livers. And Tina, loving shrimp and crab cakes. And Jiffy Pop that came from the props department because they'd gotten a big box of it. And Amanda, coffee and cigarettes and Diet Coke.
Yeah, and we had the return of the Powerhouse sandwich that comes from the Daily Grind. It comes from the Daily Grind. And I did Google the Powerhouse sandwich.
Which you've never heard of before. And they're ubiquitous here.
And I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed. It didn't sound very powerful.
I guess it's supposed to be healthy. So instead of calling it the healthy sandwich, they call it the Powerhouse, right?
Yeah. Oh, it was like hummus and like various other things. But it sounded nice. But the name kind of, I don't know, made me think it was a more protein-based thing or something. I don't know. grilled chicken and something else, but no, wasn't that at all. And also Scrapple made an appearance again, which is good. So yeah, so for breakfast with
and as usual, I would suggest everybody go check out their IMDb pages.
Oh, they've all worked on amazing things. Yeah.
I mean, Tina, besides Homicide, went to Oz, and then Law and Order SVU, The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, New Amsterdam. Bebe, who works mostly on commercials now, also did some, John Waters movies, and also The Corner and The Wire, and also the subsequent David Simon show, We Own the City, and then Lady in the Lake. And Fletch has been on a million things. Mars Attacks, Species 2, before Homicide, Hannibal, Gods and Generals. And then also, if you can jump over to what they're doing now, Tina works for a shelter called Puppy Kitty New York City, if y'all want to check that out. And Amanda, who is also a fashion designer now, has her own website and gallery in Florida, which she also mentioned. So, follow up with them. Really powerful bunch of women, very successful and good at what they did and what they do. And thanks to them for spending so much time with us and being candid and really being informative and interesting and letting us all know about what their jobs were about, how difficult they were to do, but how much fun it was on that set with the kind of atmosphere we had.
Yeah, thank you very much to all of them.
I did want to add that thanks to everyone who has contributed to the buymeacoffee.com page.
Yes, thank you.
That we have, which is buymeacoffee.com/homicide POQ instead of homicide pod. But one of the things I really appreciate is people are leaving these wonderful messages for us, talking about not just how much they enjoy the show, but how much they enjoy hearing the behind-the-scenes stories, technically how we made it, how we worked on it, and then the people that we're interviewing from the crew, and they're seeing their names in the credits after the show. So they really feel like they're getting an inside look, but also feeling just more familial, not just familiar, but more familial with the show and getting to know the crew and cast and creators. So thank you to the buymeacoffee.com folks. And if anybody else wants to slap some change in there for us, please feel free.
Yes, please do. Cool. Well, I think that covers everything. So, thank you, Susan. And again, thank you very much to everybody who has contributed to Buy Me a Coffee. We very much enjoy that. And I'm loving the messages we also get on Instagram as well. We get all sorts of messages, and it's really great to hear everybody's sort of different stories about either how they discovered the show, how they ended up working on the show, or just how they enjoyed the show and what it means to them. So, thank you very much.
Yay. Thanks, everyone.